The mysterious offer. Jake had always been a warrior, nothing more, nothing less. He had fought in countless battles, but this one was different. He didn't know it yet, but his life was about to change forever. It was a quiet morning on the distant planet where Jake was stationed. The sun rose over the barren landscape, casting long shadows across the cracked ground. He had just finished his usual training when the call came. "Jake, you are needed at the command center," the voice crackled over his communicator. It was the voice of his superior, Captain Zane. The captain sounded serious, and that was never a good sign. Jake didn't question it. He knew the drill. He gathered his gear, strapped his blaster to his side, and made his way to the command center. As he walked through the dusty corridors, his thoughts raced. Was there a new mission? A threat to the base? He had no idea, but he had learned to expect the unexpected. When he entered the command center, he was met with an unusual sight. Standing in the center of the room was a tall, imposing figure, her skin shimmering like stardust. Her eyes were a deep shade of purple, and her long hair flowed like liquid silver. Jake had seen many alien species in his time as a warrior, but nothing like this. "This is Queen Zara of the Zaltar," Captain Zane said, his voice filled with respect. "She has come to speak with you, Jake." Jake's heart skipped a beat. A queen? He had heard of Zara, the ruler of the Zaltar people, a species known for their advanced technology and unmatched strength. She was a legend, a being who could crush entire armies with a single word. But what was she doing here? And why was she looking at him like that? The queen's eyes locked onto Jake's, and for a moment, he felt as though she was reading his very soul. "I want him," she said, her voice calm but commanding. Jake blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "Excuse me?" he asked, his voice betraying a hint of confusion. "I want him," she repeated, pointing directly at Jake. "You, warrior. I want you." The room went silent. Captain Zane looked shocked, as did the other officers present. Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had never been in the presence of royalty, let alone a queen who had just demanded him. What was happening? The queen smiled, sensing Jake's confusion. "Do not be afraid," she said softly. "I do not want to harm you. I have come for something much greater." Jake's mind raced as he tried to process what was happening. He had been chosen for something, but he didn't know what. And why him? What made him stand out among all the other soldiers in the galaxy? Queen Zara continued, her voice taking on a deeper tone. "You are a warrior, a man who has faced death countless times and yet survived. You are strong, but more than that, you possess something rare, a heart that beats with honor. I have watched you, Jake, and I have decided that you will be mine." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The queen wasn't just offering him a place in her army or a position of power. She was offering him something far more intimate, something he wasn't sure he was ready for. Captain Zane stepped forward, his face pale. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, what is it that you seek from Jake? Why him?" Queen Zara's eyes sparkled as she turned to the captain. "I seek a mate," she said simply. "I have lived for centuries, and in all that time, I have never found one worthy to stand by my side, until now." Jake's mind spun. A mate? The queen was asking for him to become her partner, not just in battle, but in life. He had heard of the Zaltar's customs, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. To be chosen by a queen was an honor, but to become her mate? That was something else entirely. "But I'm human," Jake said, his voice shaking slightly. "I'm not like you. I'm not royalty." The queen stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. "It is not your blood that matters, warrior. It is your strength, your spirit. You are exactly what I need, and I will have you, Jake, whether you choose to accept it or not." The air in the room grew thick with tension. Jake stood frozen, unsure of what to do. This was the moment he had been waiting for, a chance to prove his worth, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to give up everything he knew for an alien queen. Captain Zane spoke again, his voice trembling. "Your Majesty, I must insist that Jake be given time to think. This is not a decision to be made lightly." Queen Zara glanced at the captain, her expression unreadable. "Very well," she said. "You have one day, Jake. Tomorrow, you will decide. If you refuse me, there will be consequences." With that, she turned and left the room, her attendants following closely behind. The moment she was gone, the room exploded with whispers. Captain Zane looked at Jake with a mix of concern and curiosity. Jake was left standing there, his thoughts a whirlwind. What had just happened, and what was he going to do now? The queen's demand. The sun had set, leaving the sky in shades of purple and red. Jake sat alone in his quarters, the silence overwhelming. He couldn't stop replaying the conversation with Queen Zara in his mind. "I want you," she had said, but what did that even mean? Jake had always been just a soldier, an ordinary man with a rifle, a simple mission. He had never thought of himself as anything more than a tool for war. But now, an alien queen wanted him, not as a weapon, but as something far more personal. He could still hear her voice in his head, calm, yet demanding. You will be mine. The queen had given him a day to decide, a day to choose between a life of unimaginable power and the life he knew. But what was power worth if it came with such a price? Was this just a game to her, or was there something more? He needed answers, and he needed them fast. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Jake stood and opened it to find Captain Zane standing in the hallway. The captain's face was grave, his usual confidence replaced with uncertainty. I need to talk to you, Jake, Zane said, stepping inside without waiting for permission. He was holding a data pad in his hands, the glow from the screen casting a soft light on his serious expression. Jake raised an eyebrow. About what? You saw what happened in the command center. She made her offer, and I'm supposed to decide by tomorrow. I don't know what to make of it. Zane nodded, glancing down at the datapad. I know, but there's something you need to understand. Zara is not like other rulers. She doesn't make requests lightly, and she doesn't take no for an answer. Jake leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. So what, you think I should accept her offer? Be some kind of prince to an alien queen? Zane's eyes grew darker. I'm not saying that, but you need to understand what you're dealing with. If she wanted to use you as a weapon or a servant, she would have said so. She chose you for a reason. Something about you caught her attention. Jake clenched his fists. Why me, though? I'm just a man. I've fought, sure, but so have thousands of others. Why me? Why now? Zane hesitated. Because you're different, Jake. You've survived battles that others didn't. You've been through things that should have killed you, but here you are. You're strong, not just physically, but mentally. And I think she sees that. She sees someone worthy of standing beside her, a warrior who can fight and think for himself. Jake stared out the window, his mind racing. He had always known he was different. He had been pushed to the edge countless times, and each time he had come back stronger. But was that enough to justify what the queen wanted? He turned back to Zane. I don't know if I'm ready for this, whatever it is. Zara is powerful and I'm just a man. I can't just walk into her palace and pretend everything's fine. Zane placed the datapad on the table, his face softening. You don't have to pretend, but I'll tell you this. If you refuse her, there's no going back. She's not a queen you can simply say no to. There will be consequences, and I don't think you're ready to face them. She's known for crushing those who defy her. Jake felt a shiver run down his spine. The last thing he wanted was to be caught in a power struggle with someone as dangerous as Queen Zara. But he also couldn't ignore the allure of what she offered. Power, freedom, and a place beside her. I need more time, Jake muttered, standing up and pacing across the room. I need to know who she really is. What does she want with me? What's the catch? Zane sighed, running a hand through his hair. You're not the first warrior she's chosen. Zara has had many mates over the centuries, chosen warriors who helped her build her empire, but none of them lasted. They all either disappeared or were destroyed in some way. She's not a simple woman, Jake. Her love, if you can even call it that, is a dangerous thing. Jake stopped in his tracks. You mean I'm just another pawn in her game? Zane shook his head. Not exactly. But Zara doesn't do things without a purpose. Everything she does is calculated. She doesn't pick someone unless she has a reason. You might be more than just a warrior to her, but don't fool yourself into thinking she's like any woman you've met before. Jake was quiet for a long moment, his mind turning over the words. He had no idea what Zara saw in him, but he was starting to understand the weight of the decision he faced. If he agreed to her offer, there was no going back. He would be tied to a queen, an alien, ruler whose world was nothing like his own. What happens if I say yes? Jake asked, breaking the silence. Zane's face was hard to read. If you accept her, you'll have power, wealth, and the queen's favor, but you'll also be part of her plans. There's no telling what those plans are, and you'll have to live with the consequences. It's not an easy life. Jake swallowed hard. The thought of power, of being by Zara's side, was tempting, but the fear of losing himself, of becoming nothing more than a puppet in her game, kept him from fully embracing the idea. I need more answers, Zane, Jake said, his voice firm. I'm not ready to make a choice yet. Zane nodded, his expression softening. I understand. Just remember, Jake, time is running out. Tomorrow you'll need to make your decision, and once you do, there's no turning back. Jake watched Zane leave the room, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. What kind of man was he becoming? And what kind of future awaited him at the Queen's side? A test of strength. The morning sun rose over the Zaltar Palace, casting long shadows across the ancient stone walls. Jake stood at the edge of the royal courtyard, the chill of the early hours biting at his skin. He had barely slept the night before, his mind tangled in thoughts of Queen Zara and the decision he had yet to make. But today, he wasn't thinking about his choice. Today, he was about to face something much more immediate, a test of strength. "You are ready, warrior?" came the calm voice of Zara's most trusted general, Raltok. His alien eyes gleamed with a mix of respect and challenge. Jake didn't answer at first. His hand gripped the hilt of his blade, the weapon he had carried into countless battles. This was no ordinary fight. The queen had made it clear that this was her way of testing him, her way of determining if he was truly worthy to stand beside her, not just as a warrior but as her equal. Raltok stepped forward, his towering figure casting a long shadow. He was a formidable opponent, known across the galaxy for his combat prowess. His skin was dark as obsidian, and his broad shoulders made him look like an unstoppable force. The general's weapon, a massive double-edged sword, was strapped to his back. "You must defeat me, Jake," Raltok said with a smirk. "If you do not, you will never stand beside the queen. Do you understand?" Jake clenched his fists, feeling the weight of Raltok's words. He had fought many battles, but nothing like this. It wasn't just his life on the line anymore, it was his future. "I understand," Jake replied, his voice steady. His mind was clear now. This fight wasn't just about physical strength, it was about proving himself, showing that he was more than just a soldier. This was his chance to prove to Zara, to himself, that he was worthy of her offer. Raltok raised his sword high, his eyes never leaving Jake. "Then let us begin." In an instant, the fight erupted. Raltok moved like lightning, swinging his blade with deadly precision. Jake barely managed to parry the first strike, the force of the blow nearly knocking him off his feet. He stumbled but quickly regained his balance. The general was fast, faster than any opponent Jake had faced before. His blade came down again, and this time, Jake dodged, narrowly escaping the swing. Jake's heart raced. The pressure was mounting with every second. Raltok was relentless, attacking from every angle, pushing Jake to his limits. Sweat dripped from Jake's brow as he blocked and countered, each movement calculated but more desperate than the last. "You are strong, human," Raltok growled, clearly impressed by Jake's ability to keep up. "But strength is not enough. You must have more than that." Jake's grip tightened around his blade. He could feel his muscles burning, his stamina waning. Every blow from Raltok was a reminder of how outmatched he was, yet he refused to give in. He had always been a survivor, and this was no different. Raltok swung again, his sword coming down in a sweeping arc aimed at Jake's head. But this time, Jake anticipated it. He ducked low, rolling beneath the strike. In the blink of an eye, he was on his feet, moving with the agility of someone who had spent years fighting for survival. He used Raltok's momentum against him, twisting and driving his blade toward the general's exposed side. Raltok blocked the strike at the last moment, but the force of Jake's attack sent a shockwave through his body. The general staggered back, momentarily caught off guard. Jake pressed his advantage, moving faster than he ever had before. But Raltok wasn't done. With a roar, he spun, launching a series of strikes so fast Jake barely had time to react. His blade met Jake's again and again, each impact ringing in his ears like a death toll. Then suddenly, Jake felt it, the familiar feeling of his strength beginning to fade. His legs felt like lead, his arms heavy with exhaustion. He couldn't keep up this pace for much longer. His mind raced, desperately searching for a way to turn the tide. And then, as if a light bulb went off in his head, Jake understood. It wasn't about strength alone, it was about strategy. In one swift motion, Jake dropped to the ground, rolling to the side and avoiding Raltok's next strike. As he did, he reached up and grabbed a discarded piece of metal from the courtyard floor. With a quick flick of his wrist, he used it to block Raltok's next swing. The metal rang out with a loud clang as Raltok's sword collided with it. The general was momentarily surprised. It was a move Jake had never practiced, but it was a move that gave him the time he needed to recover. Raltok growled, clearly frustrated. "You fight like a cornered animal," he spat. "But you are not an animal. You are a warrior." Jake smiled, feeling the adrenaline surge through him. And warriors don't give up. The fight raged on, each blow from Raltok more vicious than the last. But Jake's resolve was unbreakable. With each strike, he grew more focused, more determined to prove himself. Finally, with a swift motion, Jake dodged one last blow and used the momentum of his opponent's swing to spin around, landing a clean strike to Raltok's side. It wasn't enough to bring the general down, but it was enough to make him pause. Raltok stood still for a moment, his breathing heavy. Jake could see the respect in his eyes. "You have done it," Raltok said, lowering his weapon. "You have proven yourself." Jake stood panting, his body aching from the fight. He wasn't sure how much longer he could stand, but he had done it. He had passed the test. The queen had seen his strength, and now she would see what kind of man he truly was. But as Raltok stepped back, Jake's mind turned again to Zara. What would she say? What would she expect of him now? The test was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. The unexpected ally. The dust of the royal courtyard had settled, but Jake's mind was still spinning. His body ached from the brutal fight with Raltok, but there was a sense of triumph deep within him. He had passed the test, not with sheer strength, but with strategy and will. As he stood panting, he saw Queen Zara standing at the edge of the courtyard, her gaze piercing through him like a blade. Her eyes softened, a rare moment of admiration crossing her face. "You have done well, warrior," she said, her voice echoing with a quiet power. Jake couldn't quite bring himself to respond. His victory over Raltok had felt more like a survival instinct than anything else, and the queen's approval left him uneasy. What now? He had proven himself in battle, but Zara was no ordinary ruler. He didn't know what she truly wanted from him, and that uncertainty gnawed at him like a slow-down, burning fire. Before he could say anything, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "You fight well, human," the voice said, low and gravelly. Jake turned, surprised to see an unfamiliar figure stepping from the shadows of the courtyard. This new figure was a tall, cloaked alien, its face hidden beneath a hood, but the aura around them screamed of authority and mystery. Jake instinctively reached for his blade, but something in the figure's presence made him hesitate. The figure didn't appear threatening, but the tension in the air was palpable. Queen Zara, however, didn't seem concerned at all. She simply observed with a detached interest. "Who are you?" Jake asked, his voice steady but cautious. He hadn't seen this alien in the palace before, and it was rare to meet one who didn't bow to Zara's command. The figure took a slow step forward, pulling back its hood. A pair of glowing blue eyes met Jake's, filled with a strange mix of knowledge and sorrow. "My name is Lyra," the alien said, "and I've been watching you, Jake." Jake's hand instinctively tightened on his blade again, though he didn't draw it. "Watching me?" he asked, skeptical. Lyra nodded, her expression unreadable. "Yes. You see, Zara is not the only one who takes an interest in warriors like you. There are others who see you as a tool, someone to be used, discarded, or replaced once they are finished with you. But I see something more in you." Jake narrowed his eyes, not trusting the cryptic nature of Lyra's words. "What are you talking about? What do you want from me?" "I want to help you," Lyra said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "The queen, she's not what she seems. You think she chose you because of your strength, but it's more than that. You are her means to an end. I've seen this before. She doesn't form relationships, Jake. She uses people, twists them to her will. You think she wants you as a mate, but that's only part of the story." Jake felt a shiver run through him at the alien's words. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked, a sense of suspicion creeping into his mind. Lyra stepped closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a forbidden secret. "Because I've seen what happens to those who cross her. I've seen the destruction she causes, and I won't let it happen to you." "Why should I trust you?" Jake asked, his voice a mix of wariness and curiosity. "You're an outsider here, just like me." Lyra smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm not an outsider. I was once part of her inner circle, her most trusted advisor, in fact, but I left when I saw the truth. Zara is ruthless. She will stop at nothing to get what she wants, and you are nothing more than a pawn in her game. If you choose to stay by her side, you will lose everything." Jake's mind was racing. A former ally of Zara? That was something he hadn't expected, and yet something about Lyra's words resonated deep within him. He had always felt like a pawn in a larger game, but he had never seen the pieces move so deliberately. The queen's power, her influence, it was more dangerous than he had realized. "And what do you want from me?" Jake asked, his voice lower now, his suspicion fading into a cautious intrigue. "I want you to survive," Lyra replied, her voice steady. "I want you to escape before it's too late. You're strong, Jake, but Zara is not the kind of ruler you want to stand beside. She will use you until you have nothing left to give, then discard you like the others." Jake was silent for a moment, his mind grappling with Lyra's words. He had never been one to trust easily, especially in a place like this, but there was something compelling about her honesty. She didn't seem to want anything from him, not in the way Zara did. She wasn't offering him power or wealth, she was offering him something far more valuable, a choice. "Why are you helping me?" Jake asked, his voice softer now. "You don't owe me anything." Lyra's eyes softened for the first time. "Becky, I know what it's like to be trapped in a cage of someone else's making. I was once just like you, caught in her web of lies, but I escaped, and you can too. but only if you trust me." Jake felt a mix of emotions stirring inside him, fear, hope, uncertainty. But there was one thing he was sure of. This was the moment that would decide his future. He had two choices: stay with Zara and accept her offer, or walk away, leaving the power and wealth behind to face an uncertain future. He turned to look at the queen, who had remained silent throughout their conversation. Zara's gaze never wavered, but there was something unreadable in her expression. She was watching him closely, waiting for him to make his decision. Jake took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. The time had come. But which path would he take? The queen's hidden agenda. The grand hall of Zara's palace loomed ahead, its towering arches casting dark shadows that stretched across the polished floors. Jake stood at its entrance, his heart heavy with the weight of the decision he had to make. Lyra's warning still echoed in his mind. Zara will use you. She will never love you. You are a means to an end. The queen had summoned him, and now there was no turning back. Jake wasn't sure what awaited him in that cold, beautiful hall. He had defeated Raltok, passed her test, but now he needed answers. Real answers. He had seen a glimpse of Zara's power, and it terrified him. But there was something more sinister at play, something Lyra had hinted at. As he entered the room, the queen stood at the far end, her regal form bathed in a soft, ethereal glow. Her eyes glinted like stars, and her presence seemed to command the very air around her. She was beautiful, yes, but there was a darkness in her, something Jake couldn't fully comprehend yet. "I see you've thought long and hard, warrior," Zara said. Her voice as smooth as velvet, but with an edge that sent a shiver down Jake's spine. "You've passed my test, and now you've earned the right to know the truth." Jake's mind raced. This was it. He could feel the tension building, like the calm before a storm. He stepped forward, his feet moving as if on their own, his eyes never leaving the queen. "What truth?" he asked, his voice steady, but his insides twisted with uncertainty. Zara's gaze softened for a moment, but it was brief. "I chose you because you are strong, yes, but there is more. I need someone who can stand with me, not just in battle, but in the war that is coming, a war that will reshape the galaxy." Jake's brow furrowed. "What do you mean by that?" Zara's lips curled into a slight smile. "I am not just a queen, Jake. I am the ruler of an empire that spans across countless star systems, but I do not rule alone. There are factions within the galaxy that seek to undermine me, to take what is mine, and they have sent their spies, their assassins, to eliminate me." Jake's heart beat faster as she spoke, the reality of what she was saying starting to settle in. "So, you need me to protect you from these enemies?" he asked, trying to piece the puzzle together. The queen's eyes glinted with a mix of pride and ambition. "Yes, but not just that. I need someone to help me conquer them. You are the key to defeating my enemies, Jake. And once they are gone, we will rule together." Jake stepped back, trying to process her words. "Rule together? What do you mean?" Zara's voice grew colder, more intense. "You see, Jake, my empire is not just built on strength, it is built on power, on the ability to control everything and everyone. But there are forces beyond my reach, forces that I need you to help me control." Jake's confusion deepened, but a small seed of realization began to sprout in his mind. "You're not asking for a mate, you're asking for an ally, someone to help you in your conquest of the galaxy." Zara's smile was more like a predator's grin. "Exactly. You are a warrior, Jake, a warrior who has survived against all odds. You are more than just a human. You have the potential to lead armies, to shape worlds, and I need you by my side." Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He had suspected it all along, but now the truth was clearer than ever. Zara wasn't interested in love. She was interested in power, in using him as a tool to further her empire. She needed him not as a partner, but as a means to an end. The chilling realization settled in like a stone in his gut. But there was one thing he hadn't expected, her next words. "You must be wondering why I have told you all this," Zara said, her eyes narrowing. "The truth is, Jake, I need you because I have been betrayed. There are those within my empire who seek to dethrone me, and I need someone I can trust, someone who is not part of the power struggles that plague this galaxy." Jake's mind reeled. "So, you want me to help you eliminate your own people?" he asked, the weight of the question sinking in. Zara's smile grew darker. "Yes, but it is not just about the throne, Jake. This is about survival. My enemies want to see me fall, and if I am to remain in power, I must eliminate them before they eliminate me." Jake felt a chill creep down his spine. The more he heard, the less he wanted to be a part of it. He had come here seeking answers, but now he was being dragged into a dangerous game of political intrigue and war. Zara wasn't just a queen. She was a ruthless ruler, a master of manipulation who would stop at nothing to achieve her goals. "Why should I help you?" Jake asked, his voice laced with doubt. "What makes you think I can trust you?" Zara's eyes flashed with something fierce, something that made Jake take a step back. "Because you have no choice. If you refuse, I will make sure you regret it. You have already proven yourself worthy to stand beside me, but if you deny me now, you will become my enemy, and that is not a position you want to be in." The heart of the warrior. Jake couldn't shake the weight of Zara's words as they echoed in his mind. The decision had been made for him long ago, or so it seemed. But the deeper he dug into the queen's intentions, the more he felt like a pawn in a game far beyond his control. Zara had offered him power, but at what cost? Was he really willing to sacrifice his humanity for the sake of a throne, a seat beside someone so consumed by ambition? The palace corridors felt colder with each passing step. Every marble floor tile seemed to carry the ghosts of previous warriors who had stood where he stood now, their fates sealed by their choices. Some had become mere whispers in the wind, forgotten soldiers of a queen who used them like chess pieces, casting them aside when they were no longer useful. As he moved through the lavish halls, Jake's thoughts wandered back to Lyra. The mysterious ally who had once been Zara's trusted confidant had warned him, but there was still something inside Jake that wasn't ready to abandon the fight. His heart burned with the spirit of a warrior, and no matter how dark things became, he couldn't forget who he was, someone who fought for a cause, for honor. But honor had no place in Zara's world. It was a concept as foreign to her as kindness. Everything she touched, everything she commanded, was done with cold precision. She was a ruler, not a lover. She was a conqueror, not a partner. Jake found himself standing before the grand doors of Zara's private chamber. Her presence, even in this moment of doubt, still called to him. Part of him wanted to walk away, to turn his back and never look back. But another part, the warrior's heart, beat with the need to face this challenge head-on. He wasn't a coward. He had never been one to run from a fight, especially one with stakes this high. With a deep breath, Jake pushed the doors open and entered. Zara stood at the far side of the room, her back to him. The flickering candlelight from the stone sconces cast long shadows, dancing over her figure as she gazed out the grand window overlooking the palace gardens. Her regal posture, her flowing robes, they were all signs of her dominance, her unshakable belief that she was untouchable. "You came," she said, her voice calm but with an edge that Jake couldn't quite place. She didn't turn to face him. "I wondered if you would." Jake stepped forward, his boots echoing in the silence. "I'm here. What do you want from me?" Zara turned slowly, her eyes narrowing as she assessed him. "I want the same thing I've always wanted, Jake. I want you to see the bigger picture. You're not just fighting for me, you're fighting for the future of the galaxy." Jake clenched his fists, frustration building within him. "The future, or your future?" Zara's lips curled into a cold smile. "Does it matter? The future of the galaxy will always be my future. Without me, there is no order, no peace. I am the one who can bring stability, who can unify the stars." Jake shook his head. "You're not uniting anything. You're controlling everything, through fear, through manipulation. You don't care about peace. You only care about power." Her expression darkened, and for a brief moment, something dangerous flickered behind her eyes. "You misunderstand me. Power is not the goal, Jake. Power is the tool I use to protect the galaxy from chaos. You know as well as I do that this galaxy is on the brink of war. There are forces out there, ruthless, merciless, that would tear everything apart, and I will do whatever it takes to stop them." Jake's breath caught in his throat. "Is that what this is about? A war?" Zara's eyes softened, but it was only a thin veil over the steel resolve beneath. "Yes, Jake, a war that is already brewing. If I do not act, if I do not seize control, then everything will crumble. The galaxy will fall into an endless cycle of violence. The weak will be trampled by the strong and chaos will reign. I cannot allow that." The final battle. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the battlefield. Jake stood at the edge of the vast, barren plain, the sounds of distant gunfire echoing in the background. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, but one thing was clear. There was no turning back. It had all led to this moment. His refusal to stand by Zara's side had set in motion a chain of events that had triggered the full-scale war she had warned him about. And now, as he looked out across the landscape, the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. This was the final test, the ultimate battle not just for the galaxy's future, but for his own soul. Behind him, Zara's forces gathered. The Queen had taken every step necessary to ensure her victory, gathering an army so vast that it could easily crush any opposition. She had turned the galaxy's most feared soldiers into loyal subjects, and those who defied her were either eliminated or forced into hiding. Jake knew that the Queen would stop at nothing to achieve her vision: control. But what about him? What about the cause he was fighting for? After all that had happened, after every twist and turn in this game of war, could he still trust in the fight for what was right? Or had he already sold his soul to the Queen's ambition? "Jake!" A familiar voice broke his thoughts. It was Lyra, standing just a few feet away. Her eyes were filled with worry, but also a quiet determination. "I didn't expect you to be here," Jake said, turning toward her. "This is too dangerous." Lyra gave him a small smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "We both know there's no turning back now. Zara won't stop until she has everything. But there's still a chance for you to stop this, to change the course of history." Jake looked at her, his hands tightening around his weapon. "I've already made my choice. I've taken the side of the rebels. I can't let her win. Not after everything I've seen, not after everything she's done." Lyra nodded, her face grave. "I know, but remember, this is more than just a fight for control. It's a fight for something bigger: freedom, peace, and a chance for the galaxy to heal." Jake's eyes hardened. "I didn't ask for any of this, but I'm in it now. We all are." Ahead, a massive fleet of Zara's warships hovered in the sky, their sleek, menacing shapes blocking out the stars. Jake could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on him. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the galaxy's future and for the lives of those who had trusted him. Lyra stepped closer, her voice softening. "Jake, if we're going to win, we need a plan. Zara has too many soldiers, too much firepower. We can't win this battle unless we take her down, and quickly." Jake nodded. The plan was simple: infiltrate Zara's flagship, the Vega's Wrath, and destroy her command center. If they could take down Zara's ability to lead, the rest of her forces would fall apart. It was risky, dangerous, and the odds of success were slim, but it was their only chance. "Do you think we can do it?" Jake asked, his voice filled with doubt. Lyra met his gaze. "I have to believe we can. If we don't, the galaxy will fall into chaos, and Zara's vision of a united empire will become a nightmare." Jake clenched his fists. There was no more room for hesitation. He had made his choice, and now there was only one path forward. The rebel forces gathered, and the final battle began. It was a chaotic storm of explosions, blaster fire, and screaming engines. Jake fought with everything he had, his body moving on instinct as he cut down enemy soldiers, each blow a reminder of why he couldn't let Zara win. But as he pushed forward, the battle seemed endless, the enemy forces multiplying with every step. And then, through the chaos, he saw it, the Vega's Wrath looming ahead, its massive hull illuminated by the flashes of battle. Zara's flagship. "We're almost there!" Lyra shouted over the comms, her voice cutting through the noise. "The ship is heavily guarded, but if we can breach its defenses, we have a shot at getting inside." Jake's heart raced. They were getting close. He could feel the tension rising. But then, just as they neared the entrance to the ship, something unexpected happened. Zara's fleet suddenly launched a counterattack, their ships positioning themselves for a massive strike. "Hold your ground!" Jake yelled to the rebels, but it was clear that the fight was getting fiercer. Their plan was falling apart. They couldn't keep up with the onslaught of Zara's forces. In that moment, Jake's mind went into overdrive. The ship. He had to get to the Vega's Wrath. That was their only chance. "Lyra, come with me," Jake shouted, grabbing her arm. They dashed toward a nearby shuttle, narrowly avoiding a blast that sent debris flying through the air. "What are you doing?" Lyra asked, her voice full of confusion. "We don't need an army to take down Zara," Jake said, his jaw clenched with determination. "We need to destroy her heart, the command center. It's our only shot." Lyra hesitated but then nodded. "Let's do it." The shuttle blasted off, cutting through the chaos of battle as they made their way toward the Vega's Wrath. But as they neared the flagship's hangar, a massive explosion rocked their ship, sending it spiraling toward the flagship's surface. "We're going down!" Lyra screamed, but Jake held on, his mind focused on one thing: surviving this fight. They would land, they would fight, and they would finish this. The shuttle crashed into the flagship, skidding across the metal floor with a deafening screech. Jake and Lyra were thrown to the ground, but they quickly recovered, grabbing their weapons and pushing forward. This was the moment of truth. The final battle had begun, and Jake was ready to face Zara, no matter what it took. The final choice. Jake's heart thundered in his chest as he and Lyra sprinted through the narrow metallic corridors of the Vega's Wrath. The air was thick with smoke from the shuttle crash, and the flashing red lights gave everything an eerie glow. Their mission was clear: find the command center, take down Zara, and stop the galaxy from falling into her hands. But there was a problem. Every step they took, every turn they made seemed to lead them deeper into the ship's heart, closer to Zara. And with each passing second, Jake felt the weight of his decision settle heavier on his shoulders. This wasn't just about a battle anymore. It was about a choice that would change everything. "Jake, we have to hurry," Lyra shouted, her voice strained as she glanced over her shoulder. The sound of footsteps echoed behind them. They weren't alone anymore. Zara's soldiers were closing in fast. Jake's mind raced. His hands gripped his blaster tightly, ready for whatever came next. They couldn't afford to waste time. They had to reach the command center before Zara's forces overwhelmed them. The air crackled with tension as they reached a set of reinforced doors. Jake slammed his shoulder against them, sending a violent shock through his body, but the doors held firm. Lyra stepped forward, tapping a panel beside the doors. "I can get us through here, but we'll be exposed once we enter." "Do it," Jake said, his voice tight. He didn't hesitate. Every second they wasted could be the difference between life and death. The doors hissed open, revealing the command center beyond, an enormous room filled with holographic displays, consoles, and towering monitors. Zara's flagship was truly a marvel of technology, but the sight that greeted them wasn't what they expected. Standing in the center of the room, flanked by her elite guard, was Zara herself. Her posture was regal, but there was something darker in her eyes now. She had been waiting for them. "You think you can stop me, Jake?" Zara's voice was cold and mocking, carrying an air of authority that was impossible to ignore. She stepped forward, her eyes locking onto his. "You, who have seen what I've accomplished, and still you stand against me?" Jake's pulse quickened. He had come here to fight, to end the threat Zara posed to the galaxy. But now that he was face to face with her, the truth felt more complicated than ever. "I didn't come to fight you, Zara," Jake said, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "I came to stop you. To stop the destruction you're causing. You have to see that this isn't the way." Zara laughed, a sound that sent chills down his spine. "You think you can change me? You think you can turn me into something I'm not? I've done what was necessary. I've brought order to chaos. And you," she motioned to Lyra, "you betrayed me. You will both regret this." Lyra stepped forward, her expression filled with anger and sorrow. "It's not too late, Zara. You can still turn back. You don't have to rule with fear." Zara's eyes flashed. "I am the ruler of this galaxy. You are both weak to think otherwise." Jake felt a surge of anger. He had seen the devastation Zara had caused, worlds falling under her rule, people suffering under her iron fist. He couldn't let her continue this. Not for power, not for anything. "I won't be your pawn," Jake said, raising his blaster and aiming it squarely at Zara. His heart pounded in his chest, but his hands were steady. There was no more room for hesitation. For a brief moment, everything was still. Then Zara's expression shifted. The calm, controlled Queen Jake had come to know was gone. In its place was a face twisted by rage and desperation. "You think you're the hero, Jake?" Zara spat, stepping closer. "You've already lost. You're nothing but a soldier, a tool. You can't stop what's coming. I am the future of this galaxy, and you will kneel before me." Jake didn't flinch. He had been on the edge of this moment for too long. This was the fight that would define his future. He wasn't going to lose. Not now. Suddenly, the room trembled as explosions rocked the flagship. It was the rebellion, Jake realized. They were attacking the ship from the outside, creating the diversion they needed. But it also meant that time was running out. The clock was ticking. They couldn't wait for another chance. Zara's guards lunged forward, drawing their weapons. But in that moment, something unexpected happened. Lyra stepped between them and Zara, her eyes blazing with determination. "You don't have to do this," Lyra said, her voice raw with emotion. "You can walk away. You can still save yourself." Zara hesitated, her eyes narrowing at Lyra. There was a flicker of doubt in her expression, a brief, fleeting moment where the queen seemed human again, vulnerable even. Jake took a step forward, his weapon still aimed at Zara, but his voice was softer this time. "We don't have to kill each other. There's another way. Let go of the control, the power. Let's rebuild, together." For a second, it seemed like Zara might relent, but then, without warning, her eyes hardened once more. She raised her hand and her guards charged. Everything happened in a blur. Gunfire filled the room as Jake ducked behind a console, firing back with precision. Lyra was beside him, her movements fluid, taking down enemies with an ease that Jake had never seen before. But Zara wasn't backing down. The Queen was still a force to be reckoned with, and she fought with the fury of someone who had nothing left to lose. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he fought, the blaster in his hand feeling heavier with each passing moment. He had made his choice. He had come this far for a reason, but now, in the heat of the battle, he could feel the weight of his actions. In the chaos, Jake found himself face to face with Zara once again, but this time, the power dynamic had shifted. This time, she was the one who seemed vulnerable. And Jake knew deep down that his final choice was no longer about a fight. It was about what kind of man he wanted to be. With one final decisive move, Jake disarmed Zara. The room fell silent. This was it. The end of one chapter, and the beginning of another. A new beginning. The silence was deafening. Jake stood over the fallen form of Zara, his heart pounding as the weight of the moment crushed him. The air in the command center was thick with smoke and the scent of burning metal. Her once unshakable presence, the one that had ruled over galaxies, lay in ruins. The Queen who had believed herself untouchable, who had seen no one as her equal, was now powerless at his feet. But Jake didn't feel victorious. Instead, he felt a cold emptiness settling deep inside him, gnawing at his soul. What had he really won? Had he stopped the war, or had he just become another cog in the never-ending machine of violence and power? His blaster was still gripped tightly in his hands, but his fingers trembled. He didn't want to kill her. He didn't want any of this. But there was no turning back now. There were too many lives at stake, too many questions unanswered. He had come to stop Zara, to prevent her vision of a galaxy ruled by fear, but at what cost? Lyra stepped forward, her voice breaking through the thick silence. "Jake, is it over?" Jake looked up at her, his mind racing. She was standing by his side, her expression one of cautious hope, but there was no denying the sorrow in her eyes. Lyra had been with him through everything. She had been the voice of reason, the one who had reminded him of what mattered. But now, standing beside the shattered remnants of Zara's empire, Jake couldn't help but wonder if anyone could rebuild what had been broken. "I don't know," Jake muttered, his voice hoarse. "I thought I knew what I was fighting for. But now I'm not so sure." Lyra moved closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did what you had to do. You stopped her from destroying everything. The galaxy will thank you for this, even if it doesn't seem like it right now." Jake shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping him. "Thank me? For what? For killing the Queen? For destroying her dream of a perfect empire?" Lyra's eyes softened. Zara's vision wasn't perfect, Jake. It was a vision of control, of manipulation. You didn't destroy a dream, you stopped a nightmare. The galaxy was never meant to be ruled by one person, no matter how powerful they were. Jake looked down at Zara's lifeless body, the weight of her reign pressing down on him like a heavy stone. For a moment, he considered her words. Had she been right? Was she simply trying to protect the galaxy from chaos? But then, he remembered the countless worlds that had fallen under her control, the people who had suffered under her iron fist. No, this wasn't protection. It was domination. "This isn't the end, is it?" Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra stepped back, her eyes scanning the room. "No, it's not. The rebellion has already begun to spread. There are still many systems loyal to Zara's cause, and they won't simply fold because she's fallen. There's still a war to fight, Jake." Jake's stomach tightened. "So, this isn't over?" Lyra's expression hardened, her gaze resolute. "No, the battle is far from over, but it's different now. With Zara gone, her grip on the galaxy will loosen. The people who were afraid to rise up against her will find their courage. You've given them a chance, Jake, and that's worth more than anything." Jake felt the weight of her words settle over him. She was right. Zara's death would not mark the end of the galaxy's struggles. It would mark the beginning of a new kind of war, a war for freedom, for self-determination, and for the future of countless worlds. The price of freedom. The stars flickered overhead as Jake and Lyra walked side by side, the ruins of the Vega's wrath still smoldering behind them. The quiet after the battle was almost deafening. The chaos had died down, but a new reality was beginning to settle in. The rebellion was far from over, and yet the victory against Zara's empire had sparked something in the galaxy, an ember of hope, however small, in the hearts of those who had long been oppressed. Jake felt the weight of his choices pressing heavily on him. He had fought Zara, and he had won, but at what cost? The Queen was dead, her dream of a united empire shattered, but the remnants of her loyalists were still scattered across the galaxy, and new power struggles were already beginning to form. The war was not over. It had merely changed course. He glanced at Lyra, who walked beside him, her expression focused, her every step a reminder of the difficult path ahead. She had been right. This wasn't about defeating one person. It was about fighting for the future, for something better than what Zara had tried to impose. "You did it, Jake," Lyra said quietly, her voice filled with an emotion he couldn't quite read. "You stopped her. The galaxy owes you more than you'll ever know." Jake's lips twitched into a grim smile. "I didn't do it alone." Lyra's eyes softened. "I know, but it was you who made the choice. You who stood up against the greatest power the galaxy had ever known." Jake nodded but said nothing. He was tired, more than tired. He had lived through countless battles, but this one felt different. There had been no glory in killing Zara, no sense of triumph in toppling her reign. Instead, there was a gnawing emptiness, a feeling that the true price of freedom was yet to be paid. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy. Even now, as they made their way through the wreckage of Zara's flagship, there were whispers of resistance, of factions that sought to claim power in the vacuum left by her death. The galaxy was fractured, its future uncertain. "I didn't ask for this," Jake murmured as they walked through the dimly lit corridors of the ship, the low hum of the engines beneath their feet the only sound. "I never wanted to be a leader. I just wanted to survive." Lyra stopped walking for a moment, turning to face him. "You've been a leader all along, Jake. Every time you made a choice to fight for something more, you led people. You didn't need a title to make a difference." Jake shook his head. "But now, it feels like there's no turning back. I don't know what kind of leader I am, or if I even want to be one. Zara was right about one thing. Power changes people. It's a dangerous thing, and I'm not sure I'm strong enough to carry it." Lyra's gaze softened, her voice steady but gentle. "The strength isn't in the power, Jake. It's in knowing when to use it and when to let it go. You're stronger than you think." Jake didn't respond immediately. He couldn't shake the nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach. What if he had made the wrong choice? What if killing Zara had been the easy way out, the option that didn't require him to confront the deeper, more complicated issues facing the galaxy? "Jake," Lyra said, her voice softer this time, "I know you're thinking about the cost, but the truth is, freedom always comes with a price. And it's not just about one person, one queen. It's about the collective will of the galaxy. You gave them that chance." He looked at her, his eyes weary. "And what if they waste it?" Lyra smiled faintly, the weight of her own experiences reflected in her eyes. "They might. But that's not our burden to bear. It's theirs. All we can do is show them that it's possible, that it's worth fighting for. You've already done that.